town, because a woman like Miss Arnold after dark was a mugging waiting to happen. Once certain the older woman had her balance again, Evie stood, shouldered her purse, and took another stab at the same argument she'd been having with the neighborhood woman for the past year.
Seems to me you could use that fancy shuttle van all the other residents use for your errands and not have half the hassle.
Miss Arnold lifted her chin a little higher, the epitome of a southern woman with an iron core.
Seeing to myself is a privilege. Gonna take advantage of it as long as the good Lord'll let me.
She dipped her head toward the door at the front of the bus.
Best get yourself to Dorothy's and that handsome boy of yours.
Damn, shut down again.
All right, but don't think we're not going to talk about this next time. Looking forward to it, beautiful girl.
Evie shook her head and headed to the door.
Evette.
Miss Arnold's sharp voice halted her just before she took the first step down. She waited until Evie met her steady stare before she spoke again.
Gonna be all right. Whatever it is, it's not gonna beat you. You just keep on remembering that.
A tightness noosed around Evette's throat, and tears tingled along the bridge of her nose. Maybe she wouldn't have another chance to talk Miss Arnold out of taking the bus to the grocery store. Not unless her next job took her to the same part of town she'd been working in. She clenched the handrail beside the steep steps and forced a smile she didn't feel.
Don't you worry, Miss Arnold. Gonna take more than a kick or two to keep me down.
The older woman nodded as if she'd expected such an answer, then went back to staring out the window opposite her seat.
Good girl. Now get on to that boy of yours and tell Dorothy I said hello.
Outside, the temperature still hovered near 85 degrees, not exactly an unbearable number at the tail end of September, but the humidity from the Gulf and the subtle stench the last night's rains had stirred from the quarter didn't exactly make for an ideal stroll on the streets either. She hurried past a cheesy souvenir shop, a convenience store, and a pub, the latter leaving the faint scent of cigarette smoke on the sidewalk, despite the front door doing its best to trap the conditioned air inside. At the end of the block, Dorothy's diner sat like a neighborhood beacon. The entrance was right at the corner, 2 long walls of windows stretching for a good 12 feet on either side, so those moseying past could get an easy view of the crowd inside. And there was always a crowd at Dorothy's. As diners went, it was an institution, a safe haven in the middle of hell and a slice of soul food heaven all rolled into one. Per usual, Emerson was at the soda shop-style counter perched on the bar stool closest to the front door, his shoulders slightly hunched forward and his forearms around his plate like a linebacker braced to protect his food. His dirty blonde hair was a nod to her daddy's side of the family, and was a tad too long and tousled like any other 7-year-old boy's probably was at the end of the school day, but his expression was far too empty, his hazel eyes too void of emotion for someone so young. She forced another bogus smile and shoved the glass door open. The bell overhead gave a cheerful jingle, and 2 or 3 of the waitresses on the floor called out a greeting. Evie gave them all a polite wave, but went straight to her kid and added a little extra mess to his hair with a playful ruffle.
Hey, champ, how's school?
For the briefest of seconds, her little boy stared back at her, not much more than a hint of a smile, but enough to let her know the kid who had curled up so innocently in her lap a few years ago was still in there somewhere. The openness was gone again in a blink. The sullen scowl she'd grown to hate aimed back at a plateful of turkey and dressing. He shrugged and stabbed a bite of turkey.
Just a day. Yeah, but it's Friday, and everyone knows Fridays are always better by default.
She slid onto the bar stool next to Emerson and let her purse drop to the raised step beneath her feet.
Anything big go down at recess?
Emerson shook his head.
Any surprise tests?
Another shake.
Meet any cute girls?
To that, he simply lifted his head and looked at her like he was torn between walking home without her and suggesting she have her head examined.
Well, at least that got your attention, she said. You know, when I was your age, my mama couldn't get me to shut up.
Emerson pushed a green bean that had strayed too close to his dressing back to the exiled portion of his plate. No point in talking if there's nothing going on. She crossed her arms and pretended to check out the rest of the diner's patrons while her brain scrambled for any clue on how to engage with her son. He might be only 7, but he talked with more sophistication than most adults. Barely any slang, no Creole mannerisms, and definitely no profanity. More like a gentleman stuck in a child's body. So why she thought some shocking revelation on how to talk to him at his level was going to plow its way to the forefront of her thoughts right this second, after over a year of searching, was beyond her.
Well, if you're not going to talk to me, maybe Miss Dorothy will. You seen her?